Okay, let's talk about the research proposal. For a lot of us, just hearing those two words can be kind of stressful, right? But what if we flip that? What if we saw it less as this huge hurdle and more like our own personal roadmap for a really cool academic journey? That's what we're going to do today. We're going to break it down and turn this whole daunting task into something that's clear, manageable, and maybe even a little exciting. Oh, we've all been there, haven't we? Staring at that blank page, the cursor just blinking and blinking. It's like it's mocking you. That feeling of where do I even start is totally normal. But here's the thing. A good proposal is actually your secret weapon to conquer that blank page once and for all. So, okay, before we get started on this journey, we've got to know where we're headed. What even is a research proposal, really? Let's get into it. All right, let's really zero in on that one word, persuasive. See, this isn't just a to-do list, it's an argument. You're actually trying to convince a committee, and let's be honest, you're trying to convince yourself that your project isn't just doable, but that it's actually important. It really is the blueprint for your success. A really great proposal does three main things. First, it shows you're competent, that you know your stuff, you've done the reading. Second, it points out a specific gap in the research that's already out there. That's your spot, your unique contribution. And third, it lays out your methodology, which is just a fancy way of saying you have a rock-solid plan to actually get it done. Okay, so just like a building, every great piece of research needs a super strong foundation. And the elements we're about to talk about, think of them as the main structural pillars holding up your entire project. And here they are, the big three: your title, the problem, and your questions. Seriously, these three are absolutely crucial. If you nail these, I promise everything else starts to fall into place so much more easily. So let's take a look at each one. First up, the title. Now, a title is so much more than just a label, right? It's like the headline for your entire investigation. It needs to be this tiny, powerful summary that instantly tells your reader the what, the when, and the where of your project. It totally sets the stage. Now, this is my favorite part, the problem. This is all about answering the ultimate question, so what? And honestly, this can be the trickiest part, because it really forces you to explain why anyone should care about this thing you're so interested in. What puzzle or contradiction is your work going to help solve? Because without a good answer to that so what question, your project is just, well, it's just an academic exercise. But with a good answer, it becomes a mission. And that brings us to your questions. These are basically the engine that drives your entire research forward. They can't just be simple yes or no questions, though. They have to be specific, but also open-ended. These questions become your compass, the thing that guides every single decision you make from here on out. Okay, so we've got our foundation poured. Now it's time to actually start building. We're shifting gears now from the what to the how, the process of actually writing this thing. This is where the real journey starts. And here's the map for that process. It's basically 4 steps. We start with some preliminary reading, then we draft our key question, then we draft the proposal itself, and finally, we give it that last polish. Let's kind of zoom in on those first couple of steps because they're super important. So here's the absolute key. You have to go from broad to narrow. You can't just pick a topic like, say, war in literature. I mean, that's huge, right? You just end up with a really shallow summary. But what if you narrowed it down to something like how shell shock was represented in British poetry between 1916 and 1918? See, now that's a topic where you can really dig in and find something original to say. So once you've got that narrow topic, it's time for the literature review. And look, I know this can feel like a chore, like you're just summarizing a bunch of books, but try to think of it like this. You're joining a conversation that's been going on for a long, long time. Your job is to listen carefully to what everyone else has said and then figure out where you can add your own 2 cents. So what are we trying to do here? Well, first, you've got to tackle the major theories, the big ideas that really shape your field. Second, don't just list authors one by one. Group them together by their ideas or themes so you can show the different sides of the debate. And third, you need to establish what's called your argument's intellectual pedigree. I just love that phrase. It basically means you're showing the reader which scholarly conversations you're a part of and building on. All right, so we know the what and the why. Now it's time to get into the how. This next bit is all about picking the right tools for the job. In other words, your methodology. And this is really important. The method you choose totally depends on your field. So a project in literature is going to look completely different from one in, say, linguistics. One might be all about doing a deep interpretive reading of a novel, while the other is about collecting and analyzing a bunch of hard data. Let's look a little closer at that difference. On one side, you've got your qualitative and analytical research. This is all about close reading, guided by big theoretical ideas. And on the other side, you've got empirical research. This is where you're gathering measurable evidence with things like surveys, interviews, or analyzing big sets of data. Okay, so let's stop and think for a second. Let's say your topic is how the desert is represented in literature. Why is it so crucial to pick a specific theory, like eco-criticism or Orientalism, before you even start analyzing the books? Here's why. That theory acts like a lens. It gives your analysis focus. Without a theoretical lens, you're pretty much just sharing your personal opinions, But with a theory, you're doing a systematic analysis. You're connecting what you find in your book to these huge academic debates. It gives your work real structure and authority. Okay, deep breaths. You've done all the heavy lifting. The thinking, the reading, the planning. We've mapped out the route, and now we're pulling into our final destination, putting it all together and giving it a final polish. This last step is all about making it look professional. You can have the most brilliant idea in the world, but if the presentation is sloppy, it just undermines your credibility. So don't let little mistakes trip you up at the finish line. This means double, triple checking your citations, whether it's APA, MLA, whatever, and making sure your writing has a consistent academic tone. It's that last 10% of effort that really makes it shine. So when you think about it, your proposal is really your academic exit strategy. It's how you get from a vague idea to a focused project. You have to contextualize your work, showing where it fits in. You have to justify it, proving why it matters. And you have to analyze, going beyond just describing things to offer your own original insights. So, at the end of the day, please don't think of the proposal as some big, scary barrier. It's your roadmap. It's the tool that gives you direction, focus, and even confidence. The only question left really is, where is yours going to take you?